What? What is this?
So slow to catch on.
Look at those monsters!
Relax, beautiful.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Typewriter Sessions, and welcome back to episode 2 covering Resident Evil 1996. So we do apologise for the last episode because regardless of how much testing we did, we don't really know what happened in the last episode regarding the audio, but hopefully, fingers crossed, we've fixed it this time. So I'm Brett, and as always I'm joined by Claire.
Hi everybody.
And we're getting back into it, covering, as I said, Resident Evil 1996, and in our last episode we ended with the game's release in 1996. Specifically, August 1996 was when it hit the UK and Europe. So everyone, everywhere, was now playing Resident Evil. So what were we presented with? Well, first let's talk about the physical copy of the game itself. So I actually have mine right here. So back in the olden days, as you'll remember, Claire, because you're old just like me. If you went to a shop to buy a game, which seems rather alien these days, you got a nice little box with a book inside it.
Yes,
you got a book.
A bit of a pre-read before you got the game home.
Indeed. Just to find out who all the people are that you're going to be hanging around with for the next few hours. But first of all, before we move on to the book, let's just talk a little bit more about the case and the cover. Because specifically the cover, I'm not really talking about the case. It's just a plastic box. But so this is the cover art for the US and EU markets. We were discussing in the previous episode the artwork being done by Bill Sinkovics, I think his name is. Sinkovics is just quite a... Yeah. It's got a spelling on it, I'm just going to put it like that. So, now Sinkovics was famous at this point as a comic book artist, mainly doing a lot of work for Marvel Comics, and he was seen as somewhat as a visionary and revolutionary during the 80s and 90s with his unique and stylized art style. Some of the biggest credits for his work at that point were he co-created the character David Haller, also known as Legion, who was the son of Professor Xavier in X-Men, and some of his other credited work was from Elektra and Moon Knight during the early 1980s. So big shout out to my boy Moon Knight there, by the way. So in regard to this cover art, we've talked about its striking resemblance to Judge Dredd, and just how...
Yeah, and also Rambo.
Yeah, I mean, he's looking very much Stallone.
Rambo-esque, isn't he?
Yeah, he's very Stallone. And whether it's true or not, the cover art is just, well, it's striking, and I don't think we've had a more memorable cover for a Resident Evil since. Would you agree?
It's a good one, isn't it? You always remember it, no matter what. Like, if I think about having that copy of that game in my hand as a teenager, I was like, I always remember the picture of Chris on the front, looking like a hard bastard, ready to fight the zombies,
veins popping out of his arms,
standard. He don't skip arm day, does he?
No, his legs look like they need a bit of work.
Yeah.
And is that a bicep I can see popping out the top of like what is a very low cut t-shirt?
He ain't got one of them scoop neck.
It looks like it.
Things on, has it? Oh, he's gone for the scoop neck a little bit, hasn't he?
He has, absolutely.
Oh, showing off
popping out that pec. Look at that. I mean, I don't know how hard he's holding onto that shotgun, but he's clearly ready for business, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, but it's... I really don't think we've had a more memorable cover and one that leaves as much of an impact as that, regardless of whether it's been plagiarized from Judge Dredd or not. I mean, when you think about the cover for Resident Evil 2, it was so boring.
Yeah,
it was literally a black cover with a white sort of silhouette
white face
on it. Well, that's for us anyway. I think it was a little bit different in the US. I think they had one of like a zombie sort of like with its hand creeping around a door or something.
Yeah, I've seen that,
Yeah, which is pretty cool, but still it's got nothing on that, I don't think.
No.
I don't think so anyway. So back to the book, of course. Now, it was customary for games to have a book back in the times, so you get a little instruction manual. Now, they all cut this back because they were saying, we're cutting down on paper and all this kind of stuff. Bollocks, it's just a cost-cutting of thing.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with the environment. These game companies are just finding more ways to cut back on money in production, and a book is just one of them. And to be fair, it is a bit of an extravagance, but back when games didn't have the production value they do now, the book was key to sort of pack out stories and bios and things like that.
It had your controls in the back, didn't it? If you forgot.
Yeah, you had your controls. Look at this. I like this, even though I've not written any in because...
Oh, it's got a
strategy
notes. Barry, don't drop the rope down the hole. Now I've done it.
Now I've done it. Yeah, and you know, Chris can't play the piano, so go get Rebecca.
Chris can't even read, apparently.
No, he can't read.
Nor play the piano.
Fucking idiot. So, yeah, I mean, I love the fact that you always got blank pages at the back just to write down your strategy notes. I'd love to know if anyone actually used these, you know, like to solve puzzles.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that they did.
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? In your poshest handwriting.
Yeah. The shield key is here, or something. I don't know. That'd be pretty cool, but I never did it.
No, they were too precious to write in. It's almost like you had to keep it pristine.
That's what I always felt as well. I was just like, you can't deface the book. I mean, I know they want you to do that. I know they want you to write in there, but I'm not doing it.
Is that your OG copy?
Yeah.
That you've had since a kid?
Yeah.
It's in good condition.
Well, look after my shit.
It might accidentally go missing.
It's not going to go missing, Claire. You know you always get searched before leaving. Always. So, yeah, that's not going anywhere. Sorry. But, actually, tell you what, I'm just going to read out some of the bits in here, because it is rather funny. I want to read out some profiles. Oh, this was quite interesting, actually. So, everyone had, like, a designated task in the team. So, Barry Burton was the weapons specialist, as you can tell, because he had
all guns on his desk, didn't he? Yeah,
he did in Resident Evil 2. Yeah, he had the Magnum, and he also knew that the grenade launcher was good against living things.
So
that was always handy to know. Joseph Frost, he was the vehicle specialist. Chris Redfield was the marksman. Jill Valentine was the machine expert. What does that mean?
Machine expert. I know she had those righteous shoulder pads on, didn't she?
She did.
Was she carrying... Are they used so that she could carry bits of machinery on them and not damage her collarbones and shoulders?
Maybe so. Carrying around, like... Actually, those typewriters were pretty heavy, weren't they?
Yeah,
Maybe she was, like, rested a typewriter on those shoulder pads. Maybe so, yeah. Brad Vickers was the pilot, obviously. And Albert Wesker was the mission leader. And in terms of Bravo team, Richard Aiken, my favourite.
Dick. Good old Dick.
Good old Dick. Dickard. It just says communications.
Nobody knows.
No,
it's provocative.
He just talks. Rebecca Chambers, medical. Edward...
Medical / helicopter fixer.
Yeah, exactly. Now this is interesting.
'Cause it's not in the book.
What?
That she fixed the helicopter.
No, it doesn't say that. Although let me just quickly scan to her bio. Actually, the youngest. Yeah, you see, this is straight off the bat. This is already when we know it was a bad idea. She shouldn't be servicing the helicopter. The youngest member of the group, Rebecca, has been recruited for her knowledge of medical medicine and first aid. She is nervous around other members because of her age. 18 in brackets.
Fresh out of college.
Fresh out of college and uni or whatever, yeah. And due to her lack of experience, Rebecca is eager to please and will take on any task assigned to her without hesitation. So that was it. Rebecca. So Albert Wesker just turned around. Can you go serve as the helicopter? Oh yeah, sure. She ain't got a fucking clue what she's doing. It's just like, yeah, come on, off you go. Go serve as the helicopter. I'm sure it'll be fine.
She was eager to please and prove herself, but ultimately,
yeah, whatever you say, Captain. Off she goes. I'm eager to please. Edward Dewey, apparently the pilot.
Dewey. I like the way
Dewey.
Dewey. He's the pilot for...
Apparently that was the pilot, so I guess that would explain what we were saying in the last episode, where it was theorised that hand that was pulled out of the grass was Edward Dewey's.
Why don't they just get Edward to service the helicopter?
Well, he is the pilot. Maybe he was on sick.
bit badly.
He was badly.
Yeah, with some unknown illness. Yeah.
Probably went round to Barry's and he made him a curry and he was just badly on service day. Wesker rings up, Dewey, are you coming in today? No, I'm badly. But the helicopter needs servicing. Just get Rebecca to do it. She knows what she's doing.
Give the kid a chance.
Give the kid a chance. Forrest Spire was the vehicle specialist. Kenneth Sullivan, field scout. And Enrico Marini was the mission leader.
Enrico.
Yeah, he was badass. So I also like it says mission objectives. Investigate Raccoon Forest area. B, locate Bravo team helicopter. C, locate and rescue Bravo team members. D, bring situation under control. Be safe. End. Top secret.
Oh wow! Look at that.
That's cool.
Authentic.
I am reading a classified document here. So yeah, this was the book. It's pretty cool. You got tells you about the status screen. Well, I don't need to go into it. If you've played the game, you know what you're doing. I just thought the book it's just nice to read through a book because you just don't get it anymore, do you? Oh, I have to read this though. Wesker has risen quickly inside the Stars organisation and currently leads the Alpha team, viewed by many as a cool guy. Air quotations, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's a cool guy. From his snappy haircut to his perpetual shades. Snappy. Oh, he's got a snappy haircut. Wesker was recruited by a headhunter for his sharp insight and eventually founded the STARS unit in Raccoon City. Sus.
Yeah, total sus.
Ridiculously sus. I think it'd be remiss if I didn't read Barry's.
You've got to read Barry's.
Chris Redfield's old friend and partner. Former SWAT team member Barry maintains and supplies weapons for all STARS members. He has over 16 years of experience.
Wow.
Not bad considering he's only 38.
Yeah.
And has led many projects to success. Barry is a trusty ally, but has had some trouble with his wife and 2 daughters recently.
Oh.
Actually says that in the book.
Does it? Ooh.
Need to be careful around this guy. He may look or sound depressed at times.
Poor guy. Poor Barry.
I know.
No wonder he's does such tomfoolery when he drops the rope and so he's got a lot on his mind.
Now I've done it. No wonder Moira wants to leave me. Oh, bless. So yeah, that's the book, and that was the physical game right there. That's the kind of thing you used to get back in the day.
A thing of beauty.
It is. It's a piece of art and a real piece of history right there. And I'm glad I still have mine, and I'll continue to still have it, won't I, Claire?
Yes, sort of. Maybe.
Maybe. So, I've totally gone off track now because I've just been completely distracted by
Barry's beautiful bio.
Indeed. I think we can just skip all of that now because that was just fun. I enjoyed reading that actually. So, as for the game itself, well, as pointed out at the start of the previous episode, if you're listening to this, then you don't need much of an explanation as to what the game is and how it is played. But again, in keeping with the format of this show, we'll always discuss the gameplay of the Resident Evil title we are covering. Either way, the gameplay is fairly straightforward to summarise and explain to those not entirely familiar with all aspects of the game. As previously discussed during our coverage of the game's development, the game is set from a third-person, fixed-camera perspective, and players need to actively arm themselves with a choice of weapons, aim at an enemy, and open fire. The game uses tank controls to manoeuvre the character, using up and down as forward and back, left and right turn, and this is always in perspective of whichever way the character is facing. Players can restore health by way of first aid sprays or green herbs dotted around the mansion. Green herbs can be mixed with red herbs to make them stronger and recover more health, or blue herbs if you have been damaged by an enemy which has poisoned you. There is a file found within the game, the botany book, which then player can read. This explains the different purposes of the herbs and how to combine them. This is one of the various files which, as previously mentioned, are designed to tell and progress the story further, as well as often provide crucial hints and tips on how to complete some of the game's puzzles. The new 32-bit console now had the ability to save your game's progress. which,
Oh, that is just...
that was revolutionary.
Oh, really revolutionary.
Yeah, it really was. A fairly new and unknown commodity at this time. Only certain game cartridges of the 8 and 16-bit era had storage on them to allow save data, so the ability to save progress so easily was pretty crazy. I just remember being able to okay, well, we're going out now, so I'll just save and then I'll...
Oh, no, when your parents used to say, you're in the middle of Streets of Rage.
Yes.
You've been kicking Galcia's ass.
All day.
Y-Signal, the whole crew. And then, you're halfway through it. Oh, we have to go out now to... Grandaways or whatever was
Grandaways. Big
whatever
Grandaways
shops were available back in the olden days. Quick save. Got to go get some of them no frills crisps.
Oh no!
So come on, we've got to go out now, and then you just think, I'm gonna have to start that whole game again.
Yeah, because the chances are, if you left it paused, when you got back, it was just dead.
Your house was on fire.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have the checks.
Bit of good old 80s, 90s wiring.
Yeah, that's it. They didn't have the checks back then, so it was entirely possible. I remember leaving various games paused for an extended period of time, and then when I went back and tried to unpause them, they'd crashed.
Yeah, well, you just was playing fast and loose there, weren't you?
I was taking big risks.
Yeah.
With little to no payoff.
But this ability to save is just... What a weight being lifted off one's shoulders.
It changed my way of gaming forever. Just knowing that, well, if Mum says we're going out into town, don't matter. All I've got to do is find a typewriter.
I bet your mum was like, why ain't Brett acting like...
All stressed.
Yeah, all stressed and upset.
How can we be so cool about this? Why is he positively floating down the stairs? Well, it's because I can save whenever I want. It sounds like an advert. It sounds like a radio advert for saving games. So yeah, it was pretty cool. So to save your progress in your game, you found ink ribbons to use at typewriters, which were found dotted around the mansion and other locations. These would save to the console's memory card, and if you died and you hadn't saved for some time, you was going all the way back to your last save, which was rather unfortunate and very annoying.
Mistake.
Yeah. You had to save, but this is the problem you had with it though, is because you wanted to save regularly, but then that affected your game's score.
It did, but I generally still don't give a crap about that because I get so scared on Resident Evil 2 Remake that I just save it a million times just so I don't have to have Mr. X breathing down my neck again and again and again.
He was persistent, wasn't he?
So I don't tend to worry about that, but yes, it did. It still does, doesn't it, on all? Yeah.
That is like a consistent thing that they've done through all the games, is your grading and use of first aid sprays and how often you save all.
You're very frugal though, and I've watched you play your games on your channel.
Well, you don't know when you're going to need them.
Yeah, but your item box is chock full of fresh herbs and first aid sprays, more than you could possibly ever use, and by the end you've still got loads left.
I could open a pharmacy, couldn't I?
You could.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, you don't know what it's going to be like when you get to that end boss. I mean, I know you can still only carry so many items, but I'm not just going to be munching on herbs for the sake of it.
Whenever I watch you play and there's a herb on the ground, I'm like, he's going to pick that up, even though he's got about 15 in his inventory. He's going to pick it up, and you sometimes backtrack all the way to get it, and it makes my eye twitch. Because I'm one of them who just uses all my ammo up to start with because I just want to shoot everything in sight, yeah. And just use my herbs, even if it's on caution, I can't cope. Has to be fine all the time. Fine all the time?
Fine all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, you don't know if you're going to need it later on. I mean, you could get absolutely battered and then you'd be like, if I picked up those herbs earlier, I'd be okay now.
I'm going to have to use one of my 8 million herbs in the item crate.
I didn't realise I was just sat here getting a bash at. This was meant to be a podcast about Resident Evil, not my play style. My God, this is cruel. So apparently, ShinjiMikami picked up quite a bit of grief for his choice of the saving system. Apparently, he faced some criticism for that.
And what was said criticisms?
Well, just the fact that you had to manually save and you needed ink ribbons and things like that. That you had to be quite sort of picky about when you was going to save because you didn't have an unlimited ink ribbon. You had to use it sparingly almost.
But it fits in with the game style, doesn't it, of using your noggin?
I agree.
Rather than just having save when you want and, thinking about your inventory and how many slots you've got in there and stuff. So, yeah. Unfair criticism, I'd say.
I would agree. And ShinjiMikami pretty much defended the method of saving with the same logic, in the fact that it does make you act cautiously and it makes it more tense because it made you think whether you should save before proceeding into a new area or take the risk, if you couldn't really be bothered to backtrack to save. So I think, like we've just said there, it was the right thing to do. And it's now become like a series... a series constant, hasn't it? The whole method of saving, and I think it's the right thing, really. So, as the game begins, players are given the choice of characters, Chris or Jill, and the choices are more than just cosmetic. Those arms on that chair actually drop down if you want to.
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice that.
I could see you were struggling.
It's sat like I'm a triangle.
I could see you was really struggling. I was like, why didn't you just pull them down? And I thought, I'm going to have to tell her. So, yeah, they actually just dropped down.
Yeah, thanks.
That's all right.
No, our chair works.
Yeah.
I only got to 42 and, without knowing that.
Oh, there's these things here and they're not very comfortable. They're like, they just come down. Yeah. Like when you're on a train, you can pull those down.
Yeah, and like a plane. Wow.
You can do that here too.
I'm learning things every day.
Yeah, and not just about Resident Evil.
Not just about Resident Evil.
I don't even think I'm going to edit this out. I think I'm going to leave it.
For my humiliation.
Well, for everyone's humility, I guess. So, the choice of character is essentially a difficulty setting, Jill being normal and Chris being hard. But this is not the extent of the differences. Jill starts the game with both a combat knife and a pistol, whereas Chris only starts with a knife.
Apparently, I've been trusted to use a pistol. Yeah.
No, they were just like, Chris...
Give me a rubber knife.
A rubber knife and a wooden gun, which he lost. So, yeah. Where was I?
Sorry.
No, all right. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he probably is a case of he wasn't given a gun. His hands are massive, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
So maybe that's why. Maybe it was like his hands are that fucking big, he couldn't hold a gun properly, so they just left it. But I don't know. Anyway. I mean, do you remember how the size of his hands at the keyboard?
Oh, the keyboard.
In the lab.
The computer, yeah. Massive hands that take up most of the keyboard.
How does he even press the keys?
He must press about 6 keys at once with each finger.
He got lucky with the password. Yeah, so... Chris does find a pistol early in the game, though, because when you return to the main hall as Chris, Jill and Wesker are gone and Jill's gun's on the floor, so you do still get a gun fairly early. Jill's playthrough is considered easier due to the weapons acquired, how and when you acquire them, and the support character of Barry.
Well, yeah.
Who will come to Jill's aid more regularly and actively and give you key items and even kill enemies for you.
Good old Barry. You can't knock the guy, can you?
Nah, he's a gem. He's a gem. Jill can acquire the shotgun with Barry's assistance and does not need to solve the puzzle of swapping the shotgun out for a broken one in order to get it. Taking the shotgun and not swapping it would start the ceiling to come down. But in Jill's playthrough, Jill is saved by Barry from this trap and will of course famously say the immortal line, "You were almost a gibble sandwich," because that's what it sounds like. It definitely sounds like he says gibble sandwich. And I did wonder for quite a number of years whether or not he was saying Jill sandwich or gibble sandwich, and I just didn't really understand what a gibble was.
He loved that, didn't he? He couldn't wait to use that gag.
No, always. I mean, what was the point in... Why would you rob yourself of such comedy genius in solving that puzzle without Barry?
I know.
You just wouldn't, would you?
It's a travesty if you do.
Indeed. Chris, however, has to do the puzzle to get the shotgun, as he will not have somebody to come and rescue him from the same situation. Jill also acquires the bazooka or grenade launcher, which uses explosives, acid, or flame rounds, and the weapon is powerful, especially against living things.
Thanks for clarifying, Barry.
Cheers, Barry. I was going to shoot that wall and see what happened. And you have it to use pretty early on in the game. because I think with Chris, it's found on Forrest's body.
Yeah, out on the little porch thing.
Yeah,
where he's all mangled.
Oh no, you don't get the grenade launcher as Chris, do you? You don't have it at all.
You used to have your sharp wit and your biceps.
Yeah,
and your rubber knife.
And Rebecca.
And Rebecca.
Nah. I love how that made you sort of just like, instantly. That was such a genuine reaction as well. Just a disgust, a disappointment in your voice.
Well, you'd rather have Barry help him, wouldn't you?
Gosh, you would. Yeah, so the bazooka is, I'm pretty sure that's exclusive to Jill's playthrough, and Chris gets the flamethrower, but he gets it...
That's it, the flamethrower,
yes, and he gets that in the cave system, doesn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Near Enrico.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, poor Enrico. So, Chris doesn't actually get any additional power items other than the shotgun and the magnum.
Yeah.
Which, again, makes his playthrough harder. Other differences are Chris can carry less items, meaning he has to do more backtracking, or carry less when completing certain areas.
But maybe this is because he did skip leg day, so they're trying to make him run more.
Yeah. Or he doesn't have the leg strength to carry more. So, like, he hasn't got
strength to carry more.
Yeah, because he's been weighed down and he ain't got his legs to, like, hold him up. You know, just like, oh, God, I can't hold myself up. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There is a certain level of leg strength required for lifting. They do say manual handling is to lift with your knees.
Well, it is. No, I thought that... Oh, yeah, it is.
Not physically lift with your knees.
Not physically lift with your knees.
But like,
although I didn't know how these chair arms worked. So.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I do need to explain these things to you. So... Playing as Jill gave you the ability to carry weapons and still have space to carry some essential puzzle items or even health items due to her 8-item inventory slots, whereas Chris only had 6. Chris does have the benefit of being able to take more damage, however. He is also faster, meaning he has a better chance of withstanding or dodging attacks from enemies. Although, in my opinion, I don't really know how that fucking works, because the corridors and everything is that fucking narrow, you can't dodge anything.
Especially when all the hunters arrive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's so difficult. I mean, and that was the other thing, actually. The hunters especially, how the hell could you dodge those? Because they were so, like, hulkingly big.
Yeah.
And the corridors were narrow. And they were fast. Like, I don't care how fast Chris was. You can't avoid them.
They did have tiny little heads, though, didn't they?
It was kind of in their body, wasn't it?
And you kind of wanted to just pop their little heads.
Yeah. It's for, like,
squeeze
if you, like, poke it back in their body. You know? Yeah. I'd like to do that. Maybe. So... Yeah, each player has their own unique item as well, which we mentioned during our comparisons to the game Sweet Home, which was the inspiration for the game. Jill has the lockpick because she's the master of unlocking.
Of course.
Yeah. And this also made her playthrough easier, as she was able to find additional supplies, such as health and ammo, locked away in small drawers. Chris, on the other hand, needs to find small keys and use those instead, meaning this is an additional fetch quest item for him. In essence, because the player has to find those keys, take them back to that area.
That would have been a challenge for Chris with big hands.
Yeah, there's such small keys.
Yeah.
Oh, I better not lose them with my big fucking ham hands. So, he had to do, like, extra work, didn't he? So, Jill's lockpick also removed a key from the game, which was the sword key. The lockpick could unlock the doors, which the sword key unlocked, where Chris needed to find that key, the sword key, so he could progress through the game. So that was another way that Jill's playthrough was easier. Keys were an important puzzle element of the game, and attaining them was done so through various elaborate puzzles and backtracking through the game in a series of specific events. So Chris's unique item was the lighter, because he was a smoker.
Oh, of course, coolest. Yeah,
just cool
I won't even swear, cool.
Just slick.
He was slick one in that opening scene with his lighter.
Smoking away.
Yeah, smoking away.
So cool. So to be fair, the lighter only had a few uses, and retrieving the lighter from the chest for whatever and whenever you needed it as Jill wasn't really that much of an upheaval or an issue, just to go and get it and use it.
Yeah.
It was only used in a couple of puzzles, and it didn't really do anything other than that. So I I don't think Chris's item as a lighter was. I think the only times I can remember using it was in the that room where you get the map.
Yeah, like the fireplace.
Yeah, that, and you could light those candles in the guardhouse room to get the code.
Yeah.
And I can't remember any others.
No.
I suppose it did have more of a use in the Resident Evil remake because you had to burn the bodies.
Yes.
So I guess it had more of a use then. Maybe they wanted to do that in the original and they just couldn't. I don't know. So Chris's support character, however, came in the way of Rebecca, which was a rookie medic for the team, as previously mentioned in the book. So at some point of the game, players would play as Rebecca. So, say if Chris was poisoned by the giant snake Yawn, or when Rebecca must rescue Chris from Plant 42 in the guardhouse, because Chris is too fucking stupid, he can't use chemicals, he needs to get Rebecca to go make the chemical concoction V-Jolt to neutralise the killer plant's root, meaning Chris can be freed from its grasp.
Yeah.
The game story, which we have discussed, is played out through the game as either character progresses through the mansion and into an underground laboratory where they come face to face with Albert Wesker, unveiling the T-Virus weapon, the Tyrant. After its defeat, the player can free the other character, depending on who they chose to play as. So if you're playing as Chris, you'd free Jill, and vice versa. The player will then face the consequences of their decisions through the game, either resulting in the death or survival of their support character. An additional and final confrontation with the Tyrant may or may not play out depending on your choices. As you reach the helipad and manage to make contact with the Alpha Team's pilot, Brad. Oh, fucking Brad. He can be signalled using a flare. After signal...
Can I just clarify, not the
garment.
Pair of flares, not the garment.
Not the garment, no.
Yeah.
We're talking, although it'd be fucking ace if you could send Barry Gibb up in the air.
Barry Gibb is that Barry Burton?
No, I'm talking about Barry Gibb, not Barry Burton. You know, so send Barry Gibb up there in his flares. So, I mean, that'd get Brad's attention, wouldn't it, if he'd hear that. So, after doing enough damage to the Tyrant, because, I mean, that fight could be quite hard as well because he was fast, wasn't he?
He had his massive claw.
Yeah, and he could get quite quick, and you didn't have a massive space. But Brad eventually will throw down a rocket launcher to destroy the Tyrant once and for all, and the whole throwing down of the rocket launcher would that sort of becomes like a part of Resident Evil, doesn't it? Always having a big...
The multiple shots of it.
Yeah. The reveal of a final devastating weapon during a boss on a time limit becomes something of a staple of Resident Evil in future releases. So now I mentioned the time limit, this is because depending on your actions, a self-destruct sequence will be activated, and this will lead to the destruction of the mansion and the lab. Depending on which ending you get, this will either happen or won't, and as you know, depending on the ending, how it plays out, you see the shadowy figure of the Tyrant watching the helicopter leave. As it is clear, he got his binocs out.
He's got his binoculars out,
watching the helicopter fly away. If the helicopter flies away without the destruction of the mansion. So the game concludes with a live action sequence depicting your achieved ending.
Yes, so, I loved those.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this in the last episode, but that was your payoff, I think.
Yeah.
You did all of that to get that live action sequence because that was cool, and you weren't really seen in games like that. So the endings are the bad ending, which is Jill or Chris escape the mansion alone, and the mansion's left intact, so they are just sat in the helicopter alone.
Yep.
The good ending, which is Jill or Chris escape with one of their support characters. So if you're Jill, you either leave with Barry or you leave with Chris, one or the other. And so, yeah, we do need to talk about this actually. So Jill will either escape with Barry or Chris. You can leave with Barry and fail to free Chris, but if you do free Chris, depending on your actions throughout the game, Barry can be found mortally wounded as you make your escape, leaving Chris to say, "Oh God!" which is utterly classic and timeless. And Jill and Chris will leave without him, sadly.
Krill will leave without him.
Will leave without him, sadly. So,
no, that ending's so sad.
It is, isn't it? I think it's amazing that Jill rocks up and Chris is just stood there watching Barry die.
He don't even have any emotion. He's looking at his old partner on the floor, his old friend.
Partner, you know. Yeah.
And Jill's the only one who shows any sort of care.
She's the one who gets down on the ground and it's like, you know.
And Chris is just watching with obviously his arms folded and the hand on the chin or whatever.
I don't know what to do about
and
this.
And then this random shout when Barry dies.
That's it. And
it seems to me like he wanted Barry out the picture.
You could definitely
with that reaction.
You could definitely say that the "oh God" was fake.
I think it was forced.
I need to make out like I'm sad about this. How do I do that? Oh God! You know.
I bet when they were working together in that office, I just bet that he used to really hate Barry, giving him proper daggers.
Backstabbing son of a bitch.
Yeah, I reckon.
I bet all that time bowling and playing darts.
Yeah.
It was just
he kept beating Chris, and Chris didn't like that. His ego was too big for that.
Yeah. So it was like, you know, when there's a mansion incident,
yeah,
you're fucking dead meat. That was Chris's mentality, wasn't it?
And he was working on his "oh God, no" line for a while to get it sound authentic.
In his apartment, in the mirror. Oh God! Neighbours banging on the fucking wall. Get me down in there, Redfield! You wrenched you! Oh God! That's why
his reaction to every inconvenience.
Oh dear.
God.
So Chris's version is essentially the same. He will leave with Rebecca after failing to free Jill. Or what now?
You started me off.
Oh, what the "oh God"?
Yeah.
Oh dear. Right. Okay. So, Chris's version is essentially the same. He will. Oh, that's it. I'm gonna pause this.
What? Oh no!
So, Chris's version is essentially the same. He will leave with Rebecca after failing to free Jill. Or he will free Jill alone, and Rebecca would have died by a hunter attack earlier in the game if the player chose not to allow her to work with you and stay together. So this then brings us to the best ending. This is the best possible outcome the player can achieve. You can escape with Rebecca or Barry, as well as free the locked up teammate, so Jill or Chris, depending on your selected character. So basically, everyone gets out. Woo!
Yes.
But we still don't know what happened to the other one if you play as the other one. But
that doesn't tie together.
I'm not getting into that because that whole thing just annoys me. So, what happens when you complete the game? You got your ending. So now you're wanting to know what's next. You know, what's to go back for. You can go back for other endings, I guess, but why would you want to go through all that again? Well, it was obviously a very good game and it was fun. So what else can you do? What else can you go back for? So completing the game with the best ending gave you access to a previously inaccessible room on the ground floor to the mansion, which was the closet.
It's a big closet though, isn't it?
It is a big closet.
With a big mirror.
It's fancy.
It is.
Real fancy. To access the room, you would need to use the closet key, which is in the player's possession as soon as the game begins. You would need to progress through the game a little to get it, but, you know, to get access to the room where the closet is. But when you did, as Jill, you unlocked a black crop top and jeans ensemble, and she had short hair.
Yes, she did. I really liked that outfit.
It's kind of like a bob.
Yes, yeah.
Where Chris would wear a leather jacket with a symbol of an angel on the back and the words "Made in Heaven."
Yes.
Fun fact about the "Made in Heaven" slogan: this was actually a reference and tribute to Freddie Mercury, who had died a few years earlier, and to Queen's final album with Mercury as part of the band, which was released a year before the game. And the title of the album was indeed "Made in Heaven."
Oh, I never knew that. That's really good. I like that.
Yeah, and there was a song on the album, of course, called "Made in Heaven."
Could I just ask? I thought I had a false memory. Does Chris end up with like a zebra outfit in one of them? Like a zebra suit?
That's Resident Evil 5.
I never really fully understood that.
That's
why it was in my head.
I think it's something like a clubbing outfit or something like that. Who the fuck goes clubbing in a zebra outfit? What the actual... Yeah, we'll talk about that in fucking Resident Evil 5 episode. But yeah, I was just like, no one's ever going to play. Well, maybe some people did because it is so absolutely disgustingly outrageous, but no one's going to play Resident Evil 5 with Chris dressed as a zebra.
I don't know.
Did you?
For the lols.
I
don't. Actually, I didn't, but I might do.
Okay.
Might go back to it.
Well, actually, me and Charlotte are going to we're going to play through Resident Evil 5 for my YouTube channel.
Ah.
So maybe for the
put
lols,
the zebra,
I'll put the zebra outfit on.
Yes.
So yeah, okay, I'll do that then. Fine, I'll do that for all the Typewriter Sessions listeners and my co-host, of course. So, the Made in Heaven slogan would become synonymous with the Redfields throughout the series, popping up numerous times either through Chris or his sister Claire Redfield. However, this isn't the extent of the Queen references in the Resident Evil series, but we will come to those in future episodes when it is relevant to the subject at hand. But there are quite a few Queen references in Resident Evil, which is
I like that.
Interesting. Players can also unlock an infinite ammo rocket launcher. To do this, the game has to be beaten in 3 hours or less, and I used to be able to do this quite easily, but because
all right, bragger.
Yeah, I'm bragging. I'm bragging. I used to be I used to be absolutely awesomely ace at speedrunning that game.
Well, I always took it as the approach of it's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's just
with 8,000 saves, and you know.
That's just what losers say.
Yeah, denying that I'm a loser.
It's the taking part.
It's the taking part that counts. Yeah.
So
that's impressive, though, Brett. Well done.
Yeah, I used to be able to get through that game quite quickly, actually. And I'm not bragging, actually. I mean, I say speedrunner. I'm not a speedrunner, but I used to play that game that often. I used to be able to get through it really quickly.
And the most efficient way to get through it.
And as soon as you get to that point when you're playing it and you're not so bothered about what ending you're getting, you can sort of get through it quite quickly. So if you're not bothered about seeing Chris go, "Oh God!"
Start me up again laughing at that.
So before it all kicks off again, so yeah, it was good though having the rocket launcher because you could just like blast through it.
Oh, that's a fun way to play it, isn't it?
It is because you can literally just destroy anything in the way. It's just like bang, 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 bang. So yeah, it was a really good way of doing it. So unused material. So there's actually some really interesting stuff to cover here because there was a few things that were cut from the game and they weren't used, but some computer whizzes over the years have managed to get into the game's code and sort of dig through it to find things that were meant to be or were going to be in the game, but then for whatever reason they were cut. And I'm just going to sort of like just list some of these off. I mean, some people have even managed to restore some of the items into the game, so you can see them and even use them. So here's some of them that have been cut from the game. So there was a set of keys which look a lot like the kind of key that you have for like a bike lock, you know, like a D-lock.
Right, yeah.
So there was some keys which I'm not too sure what they were for. A stack of wood which might have been used to light the fire in that bedroom where you get the map.
The map, yeah.
So could have been for that. A can of oil, which may have been used to refill the lighter, or even burn the bodies, which we were just discussing a minute ago. So that might have been cut. So it could have either been for the lighter or for the burning of the bodies. Very Resident Evil 2002 remake style-y. A pickaxe, which I'm not really sure what that could have been for. One source, which I will reference at the end of this, said that it was perhaps to dislodge the boulders in the caves, which I think is a really good theory.
Yeah, because Chris couldn't punch them at that stage, could he?
Because it was up against the wall.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I mean,
but he didn't punch anything boulder-wise,
did
he, in that one? He was working up to that.
Building up
slowly.
To it. He must have had a vendetta against boulders since he saw that one.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's probably the most logical idea because in the game you literally run up to it, you run back, and then the boulder starts moving. So I think it was another item used to dislodge that boulder, and then you had to leg it. But
Barry'd have looked good wielding that, wouldn't he?
Oh hell yeah! Yeah, he's got the beard for it.
He has,
definitely. So flamethrower ammo, which I'm guessing they removed. So that the flamethrower was left in the cave, maybe due to the level of animation used to sort of wield it and use it, maybe as you progressed out of because I know that the lab area was quite demanding on the PlayStation at the time.
Yeah.
So I think maybe having the flamethrower in that area maybe put too much stress on the PlayStation, so they thought, well, we have to limit the flamethrower, it can't go any further, so maybe that's why they removed the flamethrower ammo, because it could only ever be used in that one area. Another one, which has got a really strange name, Dum-Dum rounds. Now, these were additional ammo types for the Colt Python, for the Magnum.
Oh, okay.
These were high-grade rounds, so they were more powerful than the regular rounds, so it made the Magnum even more powerful.
Oh.
Yeah, and they removed those.
Barry would have liked that.
Well, no, because he had this.
Yeah, but for his own Magnum.
Well, he would have enjoyed them, but he already had a lot of faith in his
he did, didn't he?
His weapon anyway, didn't he? That sounds wrong. So the flamethrower and Dum-Dum ammo are the two items which have been able to be added back into the game by some people who have managed to have a tinker around with it, and they do work.
Those clever people who were far more tech whizzish than.
Than you and I.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
Like that.
Nah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I'd probably just break it. So yeah. But the fact that they've been able to restore them and put them back into the game just sort of shows probably how late into production they were cut.
Yeah.
Because the fact that they still had those uses and they could be put into the guns and etc. etc. So yeah. So with all of that said, I think now when we sort of talk about the game's release and its sales, I think it's really quite shocking that Capcom did not anticipate the game to perform well or to be generally successful.
Yeah.
The game's projected sales were as low as 200,000 units.
What?
Yeah, only 200,000. This was actually due to the original idea being the game would only appeal to a particular audience. How the game went on to perform far exceeded their original projection. By the end of 1996, the game had sold over 1 million units in Japan alone.
Wow. Making
it the fourth best-selling game of the year. It was number one bestseller in the US and had managed to sell over 1 million copies by September.
God, that's really good.
Yeah, and it became the PlayStation's best-selling game, helping to increase the PlayStation console's sales as a result. It took over that market share just because people wanted the PlayStation just to play Resident Evil.
Yeah.
So the game went straight in at number 2 here in the UK gaming charts, selling 21,500 on its first weekend.
Yeah.
So
impressive.
Indeed. And in Europe, the game sold 230,000 copies on day one, so across all territories in Europe.
Already exceeded.
Yeah, exactly. And by December of the same year, it had sold 300,000 copies. So from August to December, it had sold 300,000 in total. So by December 1997, Resident Evil had sold around 400 million units worldwide, grossing more than $200 million. And that's in 1997 money.
So that is
that's roughly 800 billion now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, unless the dollar crashes thanks to Trump, but I don't know. It could get.
Well, yeah.
We'll never know. So with these sales numbers, it's safe to say the game received rave reviews and was well received upon its release. Sadly, the vast majority of the publications at the time of its release are now no longer in print thanks to the arrival and the boom of the internet. But of those that have managed to grow into an online presence and still exist today, their reviews naturally praised the quality of the game. Of the publications which are still around today, their scores were as follows. Game Informer gave it 9.25 out of 10. Why be weird? 9.25?
Could have gone 9.5.
Yeah, I mean, at least give it a half number, but 9.25. What actually has to be wrong with the game to deduct 0.75 of a point? That is just really...
Pedantic.
I don't know why you have to be that fucking specific. Really.
Yeah.
So, anywho, GameSpot gave it 8.2 out of 10. Clearly, they're just as fucking weird. IGN, 8.7 out of 10. Fucking weird again. Just
round it up.
Just go 0.5s. Don't be weird. It just makes it seem like you're being really petty. Entertainment Weekly gave it an A. Why give it a number? You've just gone completely the other way.
Gone rogue, haven't they?
That's it. They're completely maverick. They are a renegade. So, and Metacritic gave it a score of 91 out of 100 based on an average from the reviews of 8 outlets. and those being GamePro, Game Revolution, TotalGames.net, Absolute PlayStation, All Game Guide, Electronic Monthly, IGN, and GameSpot, which is quite sad because actually the vast majority of them don't even exist anymore. But that's just the way it goes, I suppose. Some of the comments made within reviews helped to solidify the game had achieved everything it had set out to do, and that was to be a horrifying cinematic experience. GameSpot mentioned it was, quote, one of those rare games that's almost as entertaining to watch as it is to play.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's exactly right.
I happily watch your videos of you play it. Because it just, if I haven't got the time to play it myself or I can't be bothered, then it's still entertaining to watch it and hear those classic lines.
Of course. And there is just, even with those old original releases, even now there is a somewhat cinematic feel to those games.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that Kirk, which for the listeners, that's my brother, he loved watching me play Resident Evil when we were kids, and now Charlotte, who's my wife, she's the same. She loves she doesn't play them. I don't think she's ever played one other than 5 and 6, but she's played those as co-op games. She would never play one on her own.
Yeah.
She said that she'd like to play 4, to be fair, but she still hasn't. But she's got generally no interest in playing them because she just enjoys them as a cinematic experience instead. Yeah. So she enjoys to just to watch them. So another review from US video game magazine Next Generation said the game, and I quote, managed to be as genuinely scary as a good horror film. No small achievement. There are a lot of things that work around games being this frightening. In this case, however, the fine character work, creepy and well executed sound effects, and just the right music in just all the right places have a subtle cumulative effect, which I think pretty much hits the nail on the head.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
I mean, that is pretty much what the game does do, and it executes it perfectly, doesn't it? So I think that's pretty much right. The general criticism for the game from pretty much everybody centered around the poor dialogue and script and the cheesy voice acting. Which, I mean, to be fair, I think for its time when voice acting in games was a fairly new thing, I think being that critical was maybe a little bit harsh.
Because, I mean, I must have been, I'll have been a teenager playing that, and I actually didn't really, I mean, I picked up on some of the things that were a bit, but I actually was just enjoying the story so much that I didn't feel the need to criticise. And now, obviously, we love those goofy lines, don't we, and stuff.
Of course. And
it makes it iconic. It's like...
It's part of it.
It's part of it, yeah.
But we look at it now in a different light, that it's good because it's bad.
Yeah.
But I think back then, I never thought of it as bad.
No,
it's
I didn't.
Like, it was the kind of quality I would expect because it's a game. It's not a movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bit that, people have been a little bit critical in here, is that I just think it's really harsh, to see live action cutscenes in a game was rare, and then the voice acting was also fairly rare for its time, and I think to sort of like pick apart it like that was just really fucking harsh. Like, come on. But naturally the game did come under fire for it, but I think they, as in the developers, tried their best to sort of defend it. And I think a lot of other reviewers did as well, tried to defend it in the sense that it was trying to capture that essence of a B-grade horror movie, that it was that campy, crappy acting that you get in those things from people who are trying to make a name for themselves in acting, and not all of them are very good. But, yeah, I think it was just a little harsh. It did work. It did work. It worked perfectly. So... and as such, the acting and the dialogue has become something of a gaming legend in its own right.
Yeah.
So, it was during its release that the term survival horror was given to the game, and ultimately being the first game to be dubbed as such. This became the name of a genre of games which would subsequently follow, all looking to put their spin on what Resident Evil had laid out. Although its playstyle wasn't entirely new because of games such as Alone in the Dark, but it was Resident Evil that gave this genre a title and thrust that genre into the mainstream. Next Generation magazine echoed this sentiment in 1996 by stating, quote, "It successfully redefined the genre which started with Infogrames' Alone in the Dark." The original release of Resident Evil has become synonymous as a PlayStation product solely because of the release and success of the original Resident Evil and its initial release on the platform. However, I think a great many people don't realise that Resident Evil was always a multi-platform title, but perhaps one of the biggest issues was that other platforms did not get releases of the game until much later, and these releases were mainly overlooked due to the fever of the game's release cooling down and the murmurings of a sequel being greenlit and already underway. So, for example, Resident Evil saw a Windows release in December 1996, so when you think it was released in Japan in March, you're talking like 9 months later.
That's it, yeah.
So it's a long time to wait for a port, but this version did come with a few exclusive features which the original PlayStation did not have. One major feature was the use of an unedited, uncensored intro, which was actually shown in colour rather than black and white, which all the other versions got. This is the only version of the game to be released with the full uncensored and uncut version of the intro, and it is still the only way to be able to see it unless you go and watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
So another uncensored and unedited cutscene exclusive to the PC was during your first zombie encounter, which you find Kenneth being eaten. During this sequence, after you see and hear the zombie take a bite out of Kenneth, a scene depicting Kenneth's head hitting the floor and rolling.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it, and only a few versions got that as well. So, as to be expected, because of more advanced hardware, the game boasted sharper graphics and quicker loading times, so as a result, players had the ability to skip door transitions and animations. In regards to gameplay, exclusive features to the PC came in the way of exclusive unlockable outfits for Chris and Jill. In addition to the outfits which were part of the PlayStation release, Jill's was very similar. Apart from this version, she wore a red crop top with denim hot pants and black leggings.
Oh, she went all out.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Partying.
Did somebody say 90s? So, and as for Chris, he got an additional leather jacket. This time a blue.
What to wear on top of the other one?
It's just fucking massive.
It was cold.
It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. He got an additional leather jacket, and this one was a blue leather jacket with a plane dropping a bomb and the words "Brave Bomber" on the back of it. And it's theorised that this is a homage to another band, this time being a Japanese metal band of the same name.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and I didn't either actually until I did my research for this. I was totally unaware of that. Players could also unlock exclusive weapons for Jill, a Mach-10 submachine gun known as the Ingram.
Nice.
This had infinite ammo. And Chris was able to unlock a heavy machine gun known as the Mini-Me, and that is spelled M-I-N-I-M-I. Mike, Indigo, November, Indigo, Mike, Indigo. Mini-Me.
Mini-Me.
Mini-Me, yeah. I don't know why they called it that.
No, I was thinking like Austin Powers, Mini-Me.
Well, this is why I wanted to clarify the spelling, because it's totally unrelated.
Yeah.
And also that had infinite ammo as well. So, lastly, another addition to the PC version, which made it unique to its PlayStation counterpart. A strange addition is found during Jill's playthrough. Playing as Jill allows players to save their progress without the use of an ink ribbon.
Oh.
Presumably this was to further differentiate Jill's playthrough as the easier mode, but I think this is a really strange addition, and I think it removes the element of survival horror from the game.
Yeah, it does.
I think it's a shame to have removed that, really. I don't think they should have done that. So another part of the game was on the Sega Saturn. Now, the Sega Saturn has got a special place in my heart.
Yeah, I never had one, but...
Yeah, well, me and Kate did. And we had some great games, and I think it was really overlooked as a console, but it's just because of the success of the PlayStation. I mean, technically, on a technical level, it was inferior to the PlayStation, but it was still a great console, and I loved it. Especially some of its light gun games were absolutely fantastic. But anyway, we're digressing there. So to be fair, there's a lot to discuss when it comes to the Saturn version, and it could probably fill a short episode of the podcast, but I'm going to try and sort of truncate everything about it the best I can. Firstly, the port to the console was handled by a third-party developer called Nextech, which was known for developing games on a third-party basis for numerous big-name developers such as Sega, who eventually did buy them in 1997, and they also handled ports for Square Enix, Namco, and Atlus. The Saturn had one advantage over the PlayStation in that it had an internal memory storage, where the PlayStation used memory cards, meaning the saving progress was quicker, but this was probably one of the only real improvements over the PlayStation in terms of its performance. One of the most notable differences between the two in terms of performance came in the form of the aesthetics. The Saturn's characters and enemies looked quite different, and this was down to a combination of factors. The Sega Saturn's hardware limitations were different to that of the PlayStation. This was down to the way the Saturn handled 3D polygons to create shapes, and when you watch any of the videos of the Saturn version of the game, you'll see exactly what I mean. So, due to a lower polygon count, the characters aren't as smooth. They're quite,
I might have to look that up.
Yeah, it is quite a different looking game, actually.
Are they just more triangular then?
Yeah, well, they've got quite jagged edges.
Jagged, that's what, yeah.
But
like
Chris in particular he's quite bulky. And I'm guessing that's probably in prep for his boulder punching days.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, he's like, but it's because of how they could create shapes using polygons.
Yeah.
And Chris is notably larger. Oh God, I'm too big. I can't get through doors. Why? The Saturn's development tools also had a darker colour palette, so the character models and backgrounds in general look quite a bit darker, and they also lacked some level of detail found on the models, which you saw in the PlayStation version.
Did they have eyes, a nose, and a mouth?
Yes.
Just.
Yes, so if you ever got a good enough angle to see them. Interestingly, backgrounds were touched up though, and they added detail, which was an improvement over the PlayStation. So the actual aesthetics of the backgrounds and the pre-rendered backgrounds were better. Overall, textures and graphical assets were presented in a lower resolution to that of the PlayStation, and when I say less, I mean half. So this is all a bit technical jargon, but I think just the fact that I'm going to tell you how different it was, you know it's obviously going to be worse. But PlayStation presented images in 640 by 480, where the Saturn did it in 320 by 240. So that's a huge graphical drop in the overall presentation. So it was inferior to the PlayStation. Some of the player models had minor changes to them whilst in the rebuilding of them, which is really strange. And Rico no longer has greying hair, for example, which
is he used just for men?
It must have for the Saturn. He must have done a bit of a show for the Saturn's release. And Forrest's wounds had mostly been removed, but it seems that these changes were made out of a personal choice rather than due to any kind of graphical limitation. So it seems like they decided to do that, but I don't really know why. I mean, all the wounds on Forrest show that's how he died. Yeah. And also the greying hair gave character to Enrico that he was like a seasoned veteran sort of thing. So I don't really know why they do that. So although most of the graphical assets which were affected centre around the character models, it must be said that one environment which had to be altered was in the labs, where the majority of the cylindrical tanks had now been smashed, and this was mostly due to the Saturn's difficulty being able to display transparent surfaces. So where you'd have like all the glass tubes and everything, they were all just smashed, which you didn't have in the PlayStation version of the game. Loading times were also longer, so the transition between rooms and cutscenes back to the gameplay was a little delayed in comparison to the PlayStation. So I've seen some like comparison videos where eventually the PlayStation version of the game is quite a bit ahead.
Oh, really?
But it's because as you load from one area to the other, that gap just gets bigger and bigger and bigger,
right,
because it takes longer for the game to load. So another down really. But so it seems like we're just sort of like saying that it was actually a really shit version of the game. But to be fair, although of the developmental limitations, the Saturn version of the game was a good looking game in its own right, and what it managed to achieve was nothing short of remarkable considering its actual technical limitations, just how close it did manage to get to the PlayStation version. So firstly, the version of the game had made up for its graphical inferiorities. It had an exclusive enemy, which was the tick.
Oh.
This was basically an enemy which was a cross between a hunter and a chimera. So it was similar in appearance to the hunter, mainly because it was a reskinned model of the hunter, but it had long sickle-type arms and had a browny red skin. And they were particularly dangerous due to their shared attacks with the hunter, but they had additional attack, which was just a one-hit kill, regardless of your health state. It could just kill you in one hit. So it had to be in close proximity, though. So other than this, they behaved in the same way to the hunter, and these exclusive enemies appeared in place of the hunters in the underground tunnels.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
so they only appeared there. Another difference came in the way of a Double Trouble Tyrant battle towards the end of the game. So when Wesker releases the Tyrant and you have to do the battle in the lab, a second one would come out.
Oh, that's quite good.
I mean, it was pretty cool. It's like they managed to make like two, but it's almost like they did this thing of like, having two is better than one. You're trying to get one over on the PlayStation.
There's a song there, isn't there?
But it's
two heads are better than one or something.
Maybe.
I'm not going to sing it.
No, but I don't know it either. So you're gonna have to tell me what it is when you remember it.
I don't even know. Just something's just
telling you that it's
a song.
Yeah. Maybe it is. I'll research that as well, shall I? Yeah. So maybe maybe they thought like two tyrants made for twice the fun. I don't know. I just think it kind of cheapens it, actually. I kind of like that there was one tyrant, that they managed to make one perfect weapon, so to speak.
Yeah, but why make one when you can make two?
I mean, if you can make two, then
it's
make
like
two.
A backup,
Yeah.
If something goes wrong.
I mean, if you can make two, then make two, but I just think it was better than
it's just a clone version, surely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonder what it was called.
Do you think they both
might have a different number? Oh, you mean actual, like, names?
Well, I thought you meant
Tyrant and then being an alternative, a derivative, were it?
What did it have?
What was you thinking, like?
Well, I thought you were just
Bob and Jim.
Yeah, like Gerald and Edgar or something, like. Oh, here's Edgar. He never comes out unless we're playing on the Saturn. So another difference was the game's gore levels, and this was especially the case in the Japanese version. So game over screens were notably gorier and drawn out. And one example is this: if the player kills you, if the player is killed by the Plant 42, the character is ripped in half.
Oh,
badass! So blood levels were higher, and kicking the zombie on the ground, which had grabbed you by the ankles, would not only decapitate the zombie, but in the Saturn version, the head would remain on the floor, and that's the same for limbs as well.
I recall playing a Resident Evil where if you kick the head rolled.
Yeah, it does. It still does, but in the Saturn,
then it
stays on the floor.
The head that's rolled stays there.
Yeah, where in the PlayStation version it disappears. Same with if you shoot an arm off, it's just like a blood pool on the floor, isn't it?
Yeah.
But in the Saturn version, they actually stay there.
Judging you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look what you've done to me. Oh, God. Other minor, and I mean minor, tweaks were made to the game. And I don't know, why I'm even bothering to tell you these things, because nobody would even notice, but these are some really small changes to the Saturn from the PlayStation version. I can't believe I'm doing this. So, the sound of the closet key turning was different.
Oh.
When Jill fires the shotgun, the fire rate was quicker than Chris's, so she could fire the shotgun quicker. Chris was able to draw the pistol, the Colt Python, and the rocket launcher slightly faster than Jill.
Well,
probably because he's so fucking hench.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were some tweaks to the game in the Saturn version.
Yeah.
So exclusive unlockable costumes in this version were a classic sort of tactical SWAT style outfit for Chris.
Yeah.
So it's pretty boring, really. And Jill had access to a recoloured version of her usual outfit, which is really boring as well. But this version differed by having a t-shirt shorter. So, in that other one that we said, she had, she was wearing a t-shirt with jeans sort of ensemble. Well, this one she had a t-shirt which sort of went up and you could see a belly.
Like a proper crop t-shirt.
Yeah, crop size t-shirt, yeah. So it was sort of showing a bit of belly button.
Oh, risque.
Yeah, sexy.
Why couldn't she have the SWAT outfit?
Because she's a lady.
I know, but I mean, nowadays it'd be
nice.
Oh,
no, nowadays, stickering her out.
But then it's like, she'd look so cool in a SWAT outfit.
Back then, it was just, well, if it's a female character, make her sexy. For all the nerds.
Yeah.
So, it was a more sort of vibrant blue, and that was about it, really. So, one of the main differences also came in the way of an additional exclusive game mode called the Battle Mode. Now, this was basically the player fighting their way through a series of rooms which increase in difficulty. The game mode had 2 more exclusive enemies not found on any other version of the game. So, during the Battle Mode, players would confront a zombie Wesker.
Oh.
So, that was quite cool. So, like, you'd find, like, a room and there was loads of zombies in it, but there was Wesker as a zombie, and he was faster, stronger, and just a much tougher version of a zombie. And at the very end of the game, of the battle mode, you came across a golden tyrant.
A golden tyrant?
Yeah, and he was, again, faster and stronger than the usual. So he was a bit...
He'd have had a posh name, wouldn't he?
Oh, yeah, he would have been Charlie Charles of Warwickshire III. Something like that. Yeah. So the battle mode was praised by reviewers and players. So the battle mode, or a variation such as the Mercenaries, has now become a staple of unlockable modes in Resident Evil as a result. So really, it was the introduction of the battle mode in Resident Evil Sega Saturn, which has now sort of like led to an extra mode being added into subsequent Resident Evil.
They're great fun, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And although nothing appeared in Resident Evil 2 as an extra game mode, apart from like Hunk's playthrough and stuff like that, but the Mercenaries really came in Resident Evil 3, but that was a variation of the battle mode, and that was because it was so well received on the Saturn. So overall, despite its shortcomings in terms of technical capabilities, the Saturn version as a whole was widely considered a huge success, and reviews were very positive, with comments such as, quote, "With all the talk about the Saturn being inferior in this department, the graphics quality cannot be surpassed. All of the rooms, the enemies and the animation are almost identical," and that was said by British video game publication Computer and Video Games. Perhaps the biggest contributor for this version of the game being overlooked isn't just the fact the Saturn had a smaller audience and ownership levels to that of the PlayStation, but it took over a year before it made it to the market. So Resident Evil on the Sega Saturn was released in July 1997, which is over a year. So by this time, much of the hype and the fanfare and excitement over this title had started to move over into the anticipation of the upcoming sequel. So Resident Evil 2, which was now well into development at this point. So it was just too late. But regardless of its generally overlooked nature, the Saturn port is always looked upon favourably, and its place amongst the series history is always seen as something as like a bit of a quirky and unique gift, which perhaps didn't really get its time to shine the way it really deserved.
Yeah.
So we also got a director's cut of Resident Evil.
Yes.
So in September 1997, Capcom re-released Resident Evil with some changes to the gameplay, and this was dubbed the Resident Evil Director's Cut. So this version of the game is seen as something of a smoke and mirrors stunt used to give people a bit of a taste of Resident Evil due to the ongoing delays and setbacks to the release of Resident Evil 2, which we will cover in our next episode. So we'll be talking about that. So the Director's Cut included the original release of the game along with a new mode, Advanced Mode. It's just stupid. I mean, why not just call it the Director's Cut? Why call it Advanced Mode? So this new Advanced Mode moved the location of nearly all important items needed to progress through the game into new and different locations. Enemies were also in different locations, and I must admit this messed me up playing this mode because I played the original so much that whenever I played Director's Cut, it
blew
messed
your
me
head.
up. Yeah, it messed me up. Did you ever play it?
Do you know what? I've got a vague memory that I might have done, but I'm not 100% sure.
Right. Yeah,
I remember seeing it, Director's Cut, and I was thinking, but I just can't remember if I actually played that. I think I just played the original.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was good. It was a good game, but it sort of like gave you something new and a new challenge playing it. But he didn't really do anything, and I think they were banging it out at like a full price game as well at the time.
Yeah,
it's like,
bit of a cash cow.
Most definitely. I mean, I've got my copy of it up there.
Of course you have.
Yeah, of course I have. Yeah. It's up there somewhere, but it's at the far end, I think, on the Resident Evil shelf.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit of a brag. So the game also included a training mode, which was basically a super easy mode where zombies took 3 shots to go down rather than 6, and ink ribbons had 6 uses rather than 3. Other new features were an auto-aim function, which was originally intended to be in the original, but was removed prior to release. The pistol now also had a chance for decapitation on a zombie, so
nice,
you could actually just blow their heads off with a pistol. Yeah. It was only a small percentage, and I can't remember what that was, but yeah, you could actually just take out a zombie with a headshot. Boom, bang. The US and European releases were supposed to include the uncensored version of the intro, which was included in the PC version of the game, and it was even advertised as such, but upon release, the game's intro cutscene was still censored the same way as it was in the original. Now, it's not entirely clear how this happened, but what is clear is that there was a mistake by Capcom Japan, who loaded the original censored version of the cutscenes into the game instead of the intended uncensored ones. Unbeknownst to Capcom USA, they kept the game advertised as having uncut cutscenes, and they didn't recall the game to correct this mistake. So, I don't really know what happened, and I did a lot of reading, and there wasn't really... The best I could make out was that it was like maybe almost lost in translation. Yeah. That there was a misunderstanding as to what should have been put on there, and then just a genuine mistake was made and the wrong cutscenes were put onto the disc. But it was a bit murky. I was getting sort of counter arguing versions of events, so I couldn't really put in there exactly what had happened. So the closest they came to help out and to put it right was they released the intro to download from Capcom's website, but I need to remind you this was 1997, so good luck downloading that on your dial-up modem.
While, and then somebody picks up the phone to ring somebody and it cuts out and you start again.
Can you imagine just like, oh great, I'm finally going to get to see the full-scale gory cutscene of Resident Evil, and then Mum picks up the phone
to ring Betterware or
to put an order in.
Case catalogue.
Mum, I swear to God, I'm going to fucking drop you. You'd be furious, wouldn't you? I mean, it's 1997, for fuck's sake. So, by the time you would have downloaded it, Resident Evil 3 would have been out. So, so it was also crazy that they had a couple of other opportunities to correct this, one of which we'll come to shortly, but the other opportunity came more recent in terms of that timeline, and at that time was when they added... in terms of the present, when I'm talking like now, they added the Resident Evil Director's Cut to the PlayStation Store.
Right.
And they still only uploaded what was actually on the disc. So we didn't get the...
Epic fail.
Didn't get the uncut cutscene then either.
Can't get the staff.
Useless. So, still, the only version in the US and the majority of the EU countries to still have an uncensored intro as part of the game is the PC.
Wow.
Even to this day. So, in terms of the game itself, the version also had a couple of new camera angles in certain places, one of which was a cool new overhead angle on the first floor of the mansion when you're running from one side to the other, which is quite cool. Yeah, so if you're running from one side to the other along that sort of like...
That balcony area.
It switches to an overhead, and you can sort of see down into the foyer.
Floor, yeah.
So that was pretty cool. And some pre-rendered backgrounds for rooms had also been updated, notably in the lab where some rooms felt especially void of any real design. They'd sort of like been spruced up a bit. Another major difference was Forrest waking up as a zombie. That was the major one for me.
That's quite a good one, yeah.
Yeah, that was a major one, that one. And I remember, I think that was actually one of the images on the back of the game. You can actually sort of like see Forrest turning and sort of facing. I think so. I should have checked before we started recording, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case. I might be wrong, but I seem to remember that. So I remember that's one of the major reasons I wanted to play it. Was I was like, holy shit, like Forrest, like getting up and being a zombie. That's really cool. So... yeah, and in some areas, zombies could open doors and it created new encounters.
Like
yeah, especially seeing as like we did actually have a cutscene within the original of a zombie
the
opening a door. And then a zombie also opened the door to get into the dining room where Jill and Barry are.
Well, of course.
So they could do it.
Interrupted Barry's forensic examination of the blood.
Exactly. What is this? And then he shot it 3 times with a magnum, even though it only took 1 shot. Fucking useless. Again. Failure. I'm telling you, Moira.
He needed his dumb rounds, didn't he?
He didn't have his dumb rounds in.
Yeah.
He must have had his plaggy rounds in instead. So, so they could open doors, and characters Jill, Chris, and Rebecca had new costumes. So Chris wore a more basic outfit, not too dissimilar to Jill's costume.
What, like a Hessian sack?
Yeah.
If we're going basic.
Really primitive. Yeah, he just had a primitive outfit on.
Potato skin shoes, Hessian sack with stars printed on it.
Yep. So that was Chris's outfit. And Barry just wore a very basic...
His underpants.
He just wore Y-fronts. Yeah.
With a nice trim.
Yeah, that nice little blue piping along the top. So, right. So... Chris's outfit was a little bit like Jill's, so he had a t-shirt on with shoulder pads.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah.
And his pants were like green with like sort of like a camo effect on them.
Not underpants, we're talking about
trousers. We're talking trousers.
Yeah.
Sorry. Green camo trousers. Let's call them trousers. So Jill wore some kind of cowgirl-esque police.
Of course.
Sexy, innit? It's sexy, innit? With a V-cut sleeveless police t-shirt, because
that's what you wear when you're
a police lady
on duty. Yeah,
when you're a police lady,
Standard.
That's what you wear. And denim pants. She had the short hair again.
I like the short hair though.
Yeah, it looked good. So Rebecca's new outfit was some kind of skimpier recolour of her normal outfit. The version was red with white vest. Medical, I guess. Yeah, and this time she was wearing some sort of red hot pants.
Oh, not appropriate. She's 18 for crying out loud.
And we all know Wesker was a perv.
And Wesker had, well, I'm not mentioning that until you get to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Yeah, they were like really short shorts, which was hugely impractical. So
especially when you're fixing an helicopter.
Yeah.
Or trying to.
That's it. You get a rotor blade up your ass.
Yeah.
Jesus. So Barry was the only one who got no new costume.
Oh no! Oh, I'd have liked him in a bowling shirt and like
Hawaiian shirt.
Oh, Hawaiian, like Magnum PI.
Yes.
Oh, he could have rocked that.
He could have 100%.
With his holster. All he needs is a holster.
That's it, just a holster with his Magnum in it.
Yeah.
That's classic Magnum PI.
And a tash.
Barry, really, like he just late to the party, isn't he, all the time?
He's the most beloved, though, I think,
of
my Resident Evil characters.
Because he's a fool. He's a lovable fool. Yeah. So yeah, bless him. No costume for Barry. What is this? Unlockable, which was exclusive to this game, was an infinite ammo called Python, which you could unlock by completing the game with the best ending. This was a very satisfying gun to use, and much more satisfying than the infinite rocket launcher, in my personal opinion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's my personal opinion. I just felt like the rocket launcher, it's very cumbersome. It looks cool to use the Colt Python. That's just my thoughts. So reviews of the game weren't as consistently favourable as the original release, with many seeing very little to get excited about, and the inclusion of a short Resident Evil 2 demo as something of a bribe to get people to part with their money. GameSpot, who gave it a 6.9 out of 10.
Again with the 9.
Yeah, 6.9.
Just round it up. Or round it down.
That's it.
If you're going to do it, just...
If you didn't like it, go 6.5 or 6.
Just commit to what your feelings are. Don't try and like...
I want to know what the scoring system is. Like, does something tabulate it for them?
Must do.
Like an Excel spreadsheet.
Must be.
And then it goes 6.9, something like that. They also stated how the game did not take advantage of modern analog controls, but because at that point they had the analog controller out.
Yeah.
But Capcom had an answer to that, because talk about flogging a dead horse. They went on to get every single penny out of something so beautiful. Capcom went for a trilogy without even releasing a sequel, because they released Resident Evil Director's Cut again with DualShock analog stick controls. Yeah. So and
Milked.
Utterly. And they released that in August 1998. So this was to make use of the DualShock controller, which at this point had become the standard controller for the PlayStation. So, but releasing this in August 1998, bearing in mind Resident Evil 2 was released in the US and Japan in January 1998. So it's after Resident Evil 2. I mean, they brought this game back to life more times than the fucking zombies.
Yeah, I know.
So, yeah, very, very disappointing. But, so what was different with this version other than the DualShock controller functionality? Well, coming back to what we was talking about earlier, you'd probably think with this release, Capcom would be saying, well, might as well fix that little problem with the intro and actually put the uncensored one on. Nope.
No.
They left it alone and didn't even change it again.
How many times?
Failure after failure after failure. The Japanese release of the game came packaged with an additional disc, which came with the unreleased and unused Japanese dub of the live-action cutscenes. So, yeah, the voice acting of the Japanese dialogue was deemed too poor to use when filming during the original game's development, and it was ultimately unused and scrapped. But, I mean, when the voice acting we got was as bad as it was, just how bad was the Japanese dub that they had to scrap it?
Meant to be really bad, innit?
It must have been bad. I mean, I guess we'll never really be able to gauge just how bad it is because we don't understand Japanese.
Yeah.
But I'd love to speak to somebody who can speak Japanese and tell us, like, oh yeah, I've listened to it and it's fucking atrocious.
Yeah.
You know, because you need that understanding of the language and the tone and everything, don't you? You need to understand how bad it is. So, so something really interesting was the bonus disc also came with some gameplay footage of the original build for Resident Evil 2 before they stopped development and essentially started again. But we'll have to cover that in the next episode.
Yes.
Because that is a whole story in itself. So, but I know what you're wondering, what was actually different with the game? Well, not a lot. The additional controller was the only real positive addition, but to release the game again just for this seems pretty ludicrous. But I think it seems essentially ludicrous by today's standards, mainly because something like this would have been like a download update.
Yes,
you know,
it would,
just adding that sort of functionality. But this was well before, and there was no continued support for games once they'd been released. What you got was what you got. So yeah, it's a shame really, but it's just their way of like constantly sort of re-releasing it and trying to sort of like give you something a little bit extra each time. A bit like when they re-release videos.
Really drip fed though. Really drip fed.
Especially when you think of the time.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's just a really crap way of just adding something a little bit extra and expecting people to get excited about it.
Yeah.
Now, the only other difference after this was a new soundtrack, but trust me, if you've heard it, it will change your life and not for the better. It is single-handedly the worst thing I have ever heard. Now, I was actually going to play some on this, but I think I'll play it to you another time. But the new soundtrack, I don't really need to play it to you. You just have to try. It's absolutely horrendous. But I think the main story around this is the fact that the new soundtrack was handled by Mamoru Samaguchi, and he was an up-and-coming Japanese music composer who went on to compose a couple of Japanese movies and Onimusha Warlords in 2001, which was another game. He also did numerous symphonic and orchestral pieces of music, which weren't attached to any media. They were just pieces of music that he did. So Samaguchi was dubbed a modern-day Beethoven for the digital age due to him being deaf.
Right.
But if you listen to some of these tracks, you'll understand that him being deaf may explain something.
Right.
Because it's really, really bad. They sound terrible. And the fact that they've actually put them on the game is an absolute travesty, and I don't really think I can fully articulate it unless I play it, to be fair. So just bear with me. Okay, so I've actually found some, and I'm just going to play it real quick. I don't know if this is going to be some sort of copyright thing, but you need to hear it because it's absolutely appalling, and Claire's just listened to it. So this is what we're talking about. This was actually a piece of music which made it into this new version of Resident Evil Director's Cut. I mean, that is just...
It's harrowing.
It's harrowing, and I don't... Harrowing is good for a horror.
It's a bit discordant, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good word for it. It's just truly horrendous.
It's like a migraine in song form. You know, like that's how it feels for me. I know a migraine's coming on, and that is what my head is.
It's kind of
feeling.
I imagine that being the theme song for when I'm being attacked by a wasp. You know what I mean?
Perfect.
And it just will not leave you alone, and no matter how much you swat it, that just keeps fucking playing. It's just like that fucking wasp! Fuck off! It's the wasp music, isn't it? So, yeah. Now you kind of think to yourself, yeah, okay, but the dude was deaf. But Beethoven wasn't famous just because he was deaf. He was famous because he composed some incredible pieces of music and continued to write and compose music after becoming deaf, including his Symphony No. 9, which most people will recognise, which is the piece, the Ode to Joy, and if you don't know it by name, you'll know it when you hear it. But, you know, it's been used in TVs and movies and many of his other pieces of music. But when you listen to this soundtrack and think, well, he was deaf, you can't expect greatness. But this is what was expected, because especially given his rise to fame on account of him being deaf and the quality of music he had composed. But this is where there's a twist. So, Samuda Gochi wasn't deaf at all.
Oh.
And it wasn't revealed until 2014 that since 1996, Samuda Gochi had been taking credit for music ghostwritten by a friend, Takashi Nigagi, who was indeed a musician and composer. Suspicions surrounding his deafness had begun to circulate a couple of years before this, when people were beginning to notice he was answering questions before his sign language interpreter had finished translating.
Yeah, that'll give it away.
Yeah. And he would also get up when hearing a doorbell. Rookie move.
Oh, to be a liar, you've got to be really proficient at it and have a good memory, haven't you?
You've got to commit. It's commitment, isn't it? So Takashi Nigaki blew the whistle on Samuda Gochi when some of Samuda Gochi's music was going to be used in the 2014 Winter Olympics.
What, that specific piece? What event would that be good for?
Well, actually, it would be good, considering I am just about to explain that it was going to be used in 2014 Winter Olympics. Daisuke Takashi's figure skating performance.
Oh my god! That'd be
manic figure skating. That would have been absolutely perfect, to be fair. And I mean, if you'd have figure skated to that and done a cracking performance, you'd have got a gold, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think it would.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It would seem Nigaki wasn't prepared to let a lie represent their country on a global scale. That's what I think. But if Nigaki was an actual music composer, why was the soundtrack for Resident Evil so bad? This is still somewhat ambiguous. The only explanation at this point is that Nigaki was either trying to play on prank on Samuda Gochi, or Samuda Gochi actually submitted some of his own work. Because I don't know. But given how completely off the mark it is in regards to actually trying to capture that horror element of the game, either of those explanations is entirely plausible. But sadly, Samuda Gochi's soundtrack for this game has become infamous for all the wrong reasons. They're all right, depending on how you look at it, I suppose. But the scandal of his deafness, or lack of, make this story all the more shocking.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Truly shocking.
Indeed. So, lastly, in relation to ports in and around this time, Resident Evil was also being eyed for a portable version of the game in the way of a port to the Game Boy Color.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it's cool, but why?
Would it have? It just wouldn't have worked, would it?
I mean, to be fair, if you look at footage of the game, of the work which was actually done on it, it's actually very impressive, like genuinely impressive. It doesn't take a game developer to know that turning this game into an 8-bit adaptation was only going to end with problems.
Yeah.
But the fact that during development, this game, as in Resident Evil, went from being a title intended to be released on the SNES, then being released on the PlayStation, shows you that this wasn't a game which could be accurately portrayed on an 8-bit portable console.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, the development and production of this port was outsourced to a third-party developer, HotGen, a British game developer, which from what I can tell is that they still appear to be in operation today.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen a game that they've been accredited to since 2015, so who knows. They were approached by Capcom in early 1999. It had been hoped that the game would be released in the autumn of the same year. HotGen set out to port the game and stay as faithful to the original as possible, and that meant everything from characters, enemies, location, and the game mechanics themselves. After pushing the title back from August to January 2000, it was clear the developer was having difficulties with this task, which was totally understandable given the task at hand. The title was delayed back again to March 2000, and Capcom ultimately pulled the plug on the project at this point, and I quote, they were not confident that the product would have made consumers and Capcom happy. And that was a Capcom rep who said that to IGN back in 2000. So ultimately, Capcom fell back onto an alternative project, which was Resident Evil Gaiden, which we'll cover in another episode. But there is still more to this story. Although the game was cancelled, over time it has become clear just how much of the game had been completed, and it is actually incredibly impressive what HotGen was able to achieve, given the limited tools they had to recreate a 32-bit 3D game into an 8-bit handheld game. Numerous videos and images can be found on YouTube, and by giving it a simple Google, but most importantly, is that copies of this game can be played in its unfinished state by the way of downloadable ROMs, thanks to them being leaked by a person and persons involved in the project. So,
doing God's work there.
Yes, they're doing God's work, most definitely, and I salute you, sirs. And ladies. Because we don't know. So, two versions of the games exist. One is dubbed Cartridge 1 and the other dubbed Cartridge 2. Snappy names. So presumably these were the two versions of the games submitted to Capcom at different stages of its development. Oddly though, Cartridge 2 appears to be the more incomplete version of the two. I don't know why that wasn't called Cartridge 1, but there you go. So that seems to be quite full of bugs, and it's more likely to crash, and there's only Chris available to play in this version of the game. So some issues were still noticeable in both versions though. So zombies sort of dropped to their knees and stayed there when they died, so the animation wasn't completed. So when they die, they'd just be there on their knees, just upright,
bowing down to
just
you.
Thank you for killing me again. So yeah, it was just they sort of just dropped to their knees and then that's it. But again, presumably because they hadn't completed the animation, I'm guessing. Sometimes enemies could also be seen through walls, which is a nice little hack.
Yeah.
Cartridge 1 seems to be more complete, with both playable characters selectable and rooms being accessible, although players cannot progress any further than the entrance to the lab section. So pretty much everything was there.
That's quite a lot,
so
then.
they must have completed nearly the whole game. So yeah, you could get into all the rooms, everything was accessible, you could play as both Jill and Chris, and you just, when you got to the lab, there was nothing more after that. So it seems like that was when Capcom said, we're done. But everything's there, including the zombie-eating Kenneth scene.
Oh.
And finding Richard. Ouch!
Poison!
And it was poisonous! Ouch! And even Forrest being pecked to death by the crows was in there as well.
Can't forget him.
To be fair, it's actually hard to articulate just how impressive it is, and I would urge anybody who isn't aware of this to go and take a look at the screenshots and the videos for it. I mean, was it a little too adventurous to try and get this game ported to a Game Boy Color? I mean, of course it was, but HotGen really did try, and given the challenge they were facing, I think they really stepped up and gave it a good shot, to be fair. So, with the release of the game and its subsequent success, Resident Evil had quickly established a fan following desperate for more, and capitalising on its success, Capcom went all in on trying to get everything out of it while they could. So in April 1996, Marvel Comics released a single issue based on the events leading up to the first game. The story was told from the perspective of Richard. Ouch. And told the story of Bravo team and their demise, which I think the story everyone wanted to know, wasn't it? Was what happened up to.
And maybe we'd found out how Dick got behind that door.
Yeah, because he's locked in.
It's locked, but he's somehow did that as he got through the door and then locked it. Thought,
so maybe,
I best lock this.
Oh, I'm dying. I best lock the door. Anyone should get through to help me. I'll lock it, just in case.
I hope it did explain that.
I mean, maybe he was locking it to stop zombies getting in.
Perhaps, yeah.
Because apparently zombies can open doors.
But then he's also hindering his own escape.
And the aid of any others that may come.
Yeah.
Double-edged sword, I guess. So, in 1998, comic book company Wildstorm were licensed to do a series of Resident Evil comics. 5 issues were printed and contained art from the legendary comic book artist Jim Lee, who had founded Wildstorm after riding a high in the 90s with his work on X-Men. Specifically, issue number 1 was a collection of short stories set before and during the first game. We'll cover these different comic book adaptations in more detail in a future episode or something, maybe. But I have to admit, I've never actually read these, and I'd be intrigued to see if I can get my hands on them.
Gonna say, I'm looking at your Resident Evil shelf, but it's devoid of
any comics.
Yeah. So I'm a bit disappointed in you, Brett.
Call myself a fan here.
I know.
Ridiculous. But I would actually like to see them. I wonder if
it'd be good to see them.
I mean, I don't think they're canon in any sort of way, but it would be interesting just to read them, just to see what they're like. So, yeah, but I don't have them, so I'm no fan at all. So, in terms of books, a novelisation of the first game was also released in 1998 by Stephanie Danielle Perry, who goes under the pen name S.D. Perry. The book known as Resident Evil, The Umbrella Conspiracy, which I like the title of that. I
like that, yeah.
It's a pretty cool name, that. So that was set during the events of the first game. As to be expected, some of the events, what led to the Manchurian incident, were written, which, again, that seemed to be a lot of what people were wanting to see and learn about. And some of the events were altered in order for it to make more sense from a book's perspective. One key thing was to bring Chris and Jill's stories together in one single narrative, which we've talked about numerous times. And it does make sense, and it really does need to be done. Some characters were added, which served to advance the story, one of which was a character named Trent.
Trent. But he was a cool dude, was he?
Well, Trent was something of a code name for he was like a shadowy character. He was like a bit of an informant. If we ever cover the books, like as a series, maybe, because they did actually do the books all the way up to Code Veronica. He was, he had a bit of a shady connection, and he seemed to be working both sides, both like the goodies and the baddies.
Right.
So I'd never read them either, so I'd actually like to read them. I think Residents of Evil, the YouTube channel, actually turned them into audiobooks.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, I think they got someone to narrate them, and I think they're on their YouTube channel.
I'll have to take a look.
I think I'll have a listen. A line of action figures based on the characters from Resident Evil were released in June 1998, a couple of years after the game's release. These action figures were made by manufacturer Toy Biz, who had purchased the license from Capcom in early 1997. They were a Canadian toy manufacturer established in 1990, and they had made then a name for themselves making figures based on Marvel properties. I think that one of their biggest things was making X-Men figures at the time, because X-Men was huge back then, and they had been making X-Men figures coinciding with the release of the animated series, and they'd become really big, and they bought the license to make Resident Evil figures at the release of Resident Evil 2. So they actually didn't get the license purposefully to make Resident Evil 1 figures. They got it to make Resident Evil 2 figures, but they also did release Resident Evil 1 figures.
I like them.
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing them when we were like on holiday as kids and stuff, and I was just like, I need them in my life. I mean, you've seen the room we're sat in. It's just, we're surrounded by figures.
But you didn't get any. Just like a Mr. Frosty, I didn't get one of those until I was like 40 years old.
Exactly.
Just thought you couldn't be frivolous in that day.
You didn't have the option to.
No frills crisps.
Mm-hmm. It's a hard life.
You just could not. Yeah, everything was frugal. Mm-hmm. Just like you with your herbs.
Yeah. Well, because you don't know when you're going to get them again. Don't grow on trees. They grow in plant pots. So, the company made 3 series of action figures in the Resident Evil line. Series 1 focused on the first Resident Evil game and consisted of 5 releases. They were Chris with the Cerberus dog, Jill with the spider, Forest Spire with the maggot zombie, so like a zombie with maggots on it. Mogget zombie.
Yeah.
Yep. A hunter and a chimera double pack, and a single supersized figure of the tyrant.
I'd have wanted the Jill, but maybe not the spider, but Jill.
No, just lob the spider.
Yeah, just throw it.
So
play a prank with that.
Yeah, spider figures. Blech. As you'd expect, these are very rare now, especially if you want the figures still in their original packaging, which I would. They were pretty cool for the time. Nothing like the highly detailed sculpts and sort of like highly articulated figures we get now. But back then, action figures based on a game, that was pretty badass.
Yeah.
Of course, here in the UK, they weren't available, as far as I'm aware anyway. But because, trust me, I looked and I never saw them anywhere. So later releases, so even years later, the original Resident Evil continued and still continues to be a game people wish to revisit, whether that's revisit the game itself or with the desire of a kind of remake. So the remake obviously did get released years after the release of the original, and people were pining for it, and they got exactly that in 2002. So Capcom released a remake to the original Resident Evil exclusively for the Nintendo GameCube after signing an agreement with Nintendo that for a specific amount of time, Resident Evil would be a Nintendo exclusive product. Once again, we'll cover all that in a future episode, so I'm going to stop myself short of saying anything more about it, but the game had a huge overhaul, and even by today's standards, it is still one of the most beautiful and atmospheric games I've played, and could arguably be my favourite Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
I think it's like the quintessential Resident Evil, isn't it?
It is.
In terms of, what we expect from a classic Resident Evil with fixed cameras, tank controls, wanting that horror, it needs to look...
Interaction of characters.
Yeah. That's it, and a truly cinematic feel, I mean, it's still not the best in terms of voice acting and dialogue, but it's leaps and bounds over the original.
Yeah.
And I think it, could easily say it's the quintessential Resident Evil. They also did, to mark the 10th anniversary of the series, Nintendo released Resident Evil Deadly Silence for the Nintendo DS.
Oh.
Deadly Silence.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was released in January 2006 in Japan, February in the US, and March in Europe. So we're getting there. It was a little after, but not as bad as it has been in the past. A number of changes were made to the game to give it a new, fresh feel, such as general touch-up of character models and enemy models. They had a little more detail. The same was done to most of the environments. Cutscenes and door transitions could also be skipped, similar to that of the PC version. One thing which we yet again evaded the game was that goddamn live-action intro. It was still censored yet again. I can't believe it, but I just don't understand why they were unable to get this sorted out. So, but one thing that did make it was the head of Kenneth's being dropped to the floor after it was bitten by the zombie. That made it in. Good of them. Yeah, good of you. Yeah, if that's all you can manage. Yeah, thanks. We'll take it, seeing that's all we're going to get. So, this version also had some other features which had been added into other titles in the series since the original game's release. So new features could be found by playing the Rebirth mode, which was one of 2 selectable game modes, the other being Classic, which was basically just the game in its original state. But the Rebirth mode had additional features, including the 180 quick turn.
I like the
which they added that in Resident Evil 3. So you could equip a knife by using one of the shoulder buttons, which was very sort of Resident Evil 4. Yeah. So that you had a quick equip knife, which was good. And there was a ton of other exclusive features to utilise the game's dual screen and touchscreen features. These included a map, which was always on screen to quick refer to. There was new special chests, which you had to open using a puzzle with the touch pen, the touch screen, the stylus pen. And knife battle encounters. So these would trigger in certain areas and sort of like enemies would come towards you, and you had to use the pen to attack the enemy. Did you never play it?
No, I never played that.
Oh, it was good actually. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't anything amazing in terms of those touch pen battles, but it just added something new to it, and it just sort of broke the game up.
Like a new dimension.
Yeah, exactly. A cool feature for the Rebirth mode was also the ability to give CPR to Richard.
Oh, he's got all them holes in his body, but we'll just give him some CPR. Yeah,
just breathing, it comes out through the hole.
Yeah,
it's like a fucking human flute. So what you had to do is you had to blow it into the console's microphone in order to resuscitate him.
Oh my god, he wasn't going to wear, was it? He never got resuscitated.
No, I'm poisoned. Why are you giving me CPR?
And he's awake and talking. He's conscious and breathing. You don't be giving CPR to people who are conscious and breathing.
Yeah. That'd be it wouldn't be a good defense, but it'd be a humorous defense to somebody who gets like arrested for, like trying to kiss somebody. Like, I was just giving him CPR. Yeah, right. Yeah. So, unlockable costumes in this mode were a ninja type outfit for Chris, which was kind of random, and Jill got a stripper cop.
Oh, for God's sake!
Ding dong, and Rebecca, a cheerleader,
a stripper medic, a cheerleader.
Doctor is here. Cheerleader. So Wesker will be happy.
Oh.
So yeah. Interestingly, although not a feature, but something unique to the game was reducing the number of hunters, with some of them being replaced by chimeras. So
I don't know if that's worse or better. I don't like either. I'm
not keen on either. I think the chimeras were easier to deal with, but they were only seen in the lab area of the original game. A bit creepy
though and fast, weren't they? Yeah. I didn't like them when they're on the ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. Another exclusive feature, which sadly I never got to experience, was the addition of a 4-player multiplayer mode.
I like that.
I have done extensive research on this, and it is looking so fucking cool. So, this was really, really cool. I wish I had somebody at the time to play it with me, because you could even just do it 2-player, but it had up to 4 players. But the only catch was that you had to be on the same network. You couldn't do it online, so it was only local network. The multiplayer mode had a versus and a co-op mode, which players had to complete 3 different sections of the game: the lab, the guardhouse, or the mansion. The aim of the game was to reach one end of the area to the other and kill the enemies along the way, similar to that of the battle mode found on the Saturn port.
Yeah.
In co-op, you worked together, which I loved the idea of that. The only problem was that your friend's character wasn't visible. You was just like a 3D star on the screen, so you never actually saw the other player. You were just highlighted by an icon, which was a shame, but I'm guessing that was probably due to the limitations of the DS, having to sort of like render another character in the space. Which is a shame, but I could have lived with it. But in the versus mode, it was a rush to the end, so it was the same thing, but it was whoever got to the end the quickest and got the most points for killing enemies. So it was kind of like a hybrid between mercenaries and battle mode, which was pretty cool again. So I think the thing for me in particular was the number of playable characters in this mode. So your choices were Chris, Jill, Rebecca, Barry, so the usual suspects.
Excellent.
Yeah, but there's more. You could also go on to unlock Kenneth, Forrest, Enrico, Richard, and Wesker.
That's good. I like that.
So you had a whole...
the whole gang was there.
Yeah, the whole gang's back together again. So, they were all like rendered and all playable.
That's
and
good.
I think that's really freaking cool. So you could play any of those, and... I just thought it was really cool when I've seen the videos to see the characters sort of being rebuilt, and I've seen them running around and actually interacting with stuff and using weapons. I just thought that was awesome, and watching the videos of it, I really want to play it now. So, but the DS port was sadly, I think maybe it didn't, but I feel like it don't come up very often.
No.
I think there's even some people don't even realise it did get a DS port, so it gets overlooked and forgotten quite a lot, and some people like I said, just aren't aware it even exists. So, but as always with Nintendo releases, only a limited number of copies were made, and even fewer are out there now. And picking up a physical copy of the game will probably set you back a fair amount.
Is that what you're looking for?
I've got one up there.
You got one up there?
Yeah, I got it up there. Yeah. You see it? Sorry. I'm a collector. What do you want? Just because I ain't got the comics, I've got the games. I've got every game. Nearly. Oh, there's my Warhammer stuff.
Sorry. Just destroy it.
Oh, do you know?
You better give me that DS game. All that Warhammer stuff's getting lobbed out the window.
So, other appearances in games. All the Resident Evil characters and other famous things related to the games would go on to like cameo in other games and media over the years, but specifically relating to the original Resident Evil, Jill Valentine was a playable character in the Capcom beat-em-up Marvel vs. Capcom 2, New Age of Heroes. I absolutely loved this game, and I battered it when I was younger. I fucking loved it. Jill was one of the Capcom characters in the lineup, but oddly, she was the only Resident Evil character. So,
good old Jill.
Flying the flag. What is also strange, though, is that this game released in the year 2000, meaning that Resident Evil 2 had been released in between the original game and this. But they still went for Leon rather than... they still went for Jill rather than like a fan favourite like Leon.
Yeah.
So Leon would have been the most sort of in-the-know character at that time. He was maybe one of the last played. But yeah, they still went for Jill, so good for them. Yeah. Nevertheless, it was pretty cool seeing Jill in this version. She had a really cool sort of like stylized Japanese animated art style and she looked absolutely awesome. The game's overall artwork used during concept, in the game splash screens, and the promotion art was fantastic, and it's absolutely beautiful. And seeing both Capcom characters and Marvel characters like this drawn in like that Eastern sort of style it's amazing. She had some really nice animated moves using a combat knife in some of her attacks, and she could also use some of her other weapons like the bazooka or the grenade launcher, whichever you prefer to call it, the rocket launcher, handgun and shotgun. She could also call on some of the bio weapons to attack the opposing player, so she could send out zombies, dogs, bats, which is weird because I don't remember there being any bats in the game.
Not even in the caves. I can't remember seeing any bats.
Not in the original.
No.
I don't remember bats. I really don't.
Just summoning all these creatures.
Yeah.
To kill.
Just whatever you get your hands on.
Yeah, she was representing, wasn't she?
Send out a zombie cat. Yeah. So there was crows as well, and of course you could send out the tyrant.
Oh, nice. Girl tyrant? Or bog standard? Or the Timu?
Just Timu tyrant.
Yeah.
Yeah, just Edgar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Edgar.
So yeah, I seem to remember she could drop herbs as well for like top ups on your health.
Oh.
But if there's anyone listening and knows that game, if they could confirm that for me. But I seem to remember that you could drop herbs and they gave you a really small amount of health. Anyway, it was really, really cool. There's of course been hundreds of fan projects. I'm just going to list some of the like notable ones. I think one of the ones that I do need to cover is the Game Boy Color project, which we never saw the light of day. Someone went through the effort of completely reanimating and reskinning the character models of the PC version of the game to look like 8-bit models.
Wow.
And it looks phenomenal. The amount of work that's gone into it, but they've even done it with the soundtrack as well. So the soundtrack sounds like an 8-bit game, and it just looks and sounds so good. Like the amount of effort that's gone into it, and I should probably like credit the person who made it. I did actually make a note of it down here somewhere. Yeah, the mod was made by Leigi Boy, Leigi Boy. He has his own YouTube channel and it's dedicated to making mods that he does of the Resident Evil franchise, and this is just one of them, and it just looks it really is just fantastic.
That's some dedication.
Yes, and there's only a couple of times in it that I can see where the lighting just makes them look not totally flat 8-bit, but otherwise it is perfect. It's flawless. So it's probably the closest we'd ever get to that Game Boy Color port being completed, really. So yeah, another one was clearly someone like the idea of walking around the mansion in first perspective, so someone's made a fan game of that. That person is Pero Autonomo, and I believe that is still in development. They are still progressively going back and touching it up and working on it, and it looks pretty cool seeing the mansion in first perspective. Maybe we'll see it one day, I don't know. And another, which I think you would like this, because this is very me and you, Claire. It is a Resident Evil game in the style of Streets of Rage. Nice.
Yeah, I would like that.
I'll find some videos for you, but seriously, it is so fucking cool. And this is made by Chris Monville, and it's called Resident Evil Survive. It's a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up. It takes place in the Spencer Mansion, and all the characters are in that really cool Japanese animated art style that you get on something like Final Fight and things like that, Fatal Fury, Street Fighter. And Jill, her character model is basically that straight from Marvel vs. Capcom.
I'd really like to play that.
I'll show you it. It is so fucking cool. And no, it's definitely a fan game. It's not a mod. It's completely original. And you could play characters Chris, Jill, Barry, Rebecca, and then you could also play Wesker. But the Wesker character was more of his appearance in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which is inspired by his Resident Evil 5 look with the long trench coat and all the rest of it. Even his moveset's the same as it is in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which is really cool. So it's basically just him pulled from that.
Bro rocks that look, doesn't he?
Yeah, 100%. That's Wesker's look right there, 100%. So other characters included Leon, Claire, and Ada, and Carlos from Resident Evil 3, and even Krauser from Resident Evil 4.
Oh, Crow. Do you know what? I really want to play that. That would give me so much satisfaction.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll try and find a version of it, and I'll download it, and maybe we'll have a quick bash on it. I'll get the controllers plugged into the laptop, so I'll have a look for that. So the enemies are the obvious ones, so zombies and dogs, different variations of the zombies, even Crimson Heads from the Resident Evil remake.
Oh, they're scary.
Yeah, they're real scary. And then Zombie Forest, who charges in every now and then. Other enemies include the Hunters, the Chimeras. Plant 42 was a boss battle. Lisa Trevor from Resident Evil remake.
Yeah, bless her, but she does terrify the life out of me. Yeah,
bless her. So all of these characters and sprites and models have generally been reused or repurposed from other beat-em-ups, either of official or unofficial means, but they're just so well done. They just don't look recycled at all. Some of them are sort of been repainted or touched up so they look like the characters that they're supposed to, but it's done so well that they just look genuinely... It looks as if they've been purpose-built for the game rather than repurposed. So it's a really good one. Go check out Chris Monville's YouTube channel. He's always doing something. I think he's even working on adding stages from Resident Evil 0 and stuff. But it's a real passion project for him by the looks of it. A lot of heart and soul gone into it. And if you're a fan of those side-scrolling beat-em-ups, definitely worth playing.
Yes.
So, before we wrap up, something I'd like to quickly touch on is the actors in the game. Now, I think we will dedicate an episode to the whole voice acting, live action thing, because it's just got such a big, it's definitely a topic of its own, but I think a lot of it has been... I need to touch on it because there's a lot of questions of who were the actors and where are they now? And I think it's plagued a lot of fans for a long time. People have been desperate to track these people down because, as far as I can tell, they've never been in anything else since. And I think now, in the age of the internet, fans have a place where they've been able to speak online and put their thoughts together about who these people were. Oh, I remember seeing them in this. I remember seeing, is this them? Is that them? And they've almost been able to become their own little sort of detectives trying to track these people down, which is kind of creepy when I say it out loud. But still, it's pretty cool that people have, they're that dedicated and they have that much love that I think the main reason they want to track them down is because they want to show their appreciation of what they gave them in a game. So, and it's become really crucial to fans. They want to... These were faces of a major phenomenon that started a really... Well, it birthed a franchise and a love for a series, and they were the face of it, wasn't they? You know, and the voices, I suppose. So, you know, I mean, that's the faces of Wesker and everything that I see first in a lot of cases. So, there's also a level of mystique around these people because we've just, like I said, we've never seen them in anything else, and the only thing I can think of is that these actors mainly had roles in Japan for Japanese TV and movies because, as we mentioned in the last episode, they were recruited in Japan. Yeah, there was one. Just based on their availability. So they were working over there at the time. So it's clear to me that if they were ever going to appear in stuff, it must have been in something in Japan. Yeah. And that's why we've just never seen it. So it's made it difficult over the years to track these people down, but I think some of the biggest breakthroughs have been through the YouTube channel Residents of Evil.
Yeah, I saw them on that.
Yeah, exactly. You've watched those videos. A lot of fans probably have as well. If you've not seen them, go check it out. Residents of Evil. They've managed to track down a lot of the live action actors, some of the voice ones as well, and it's definitely worth a look. Just seeing how also insanely oblivious they are to what they were taking a part in. Like they had no idea what they were a part of, and still to this until very recently that they had no idea what they were a part of. And I think that's crazy. So you know they're only just learning of what they were a part of. So in terms of all of that, we will cover it in a future episode properly. I think we'll talk about some of those actors and what they've been doing, but I think it probably just deserves its own episode.
Yeah,
talk about it in better detail. So with the game's release, and it's out there now, and everyone's looking at Resident Evil 2, I think we need to finally talk about what kind of legacy did Resident Evil leave. Well, obviously it launched a franchise of its own, which still endures today. Resident Evil 9 is coming out next year, and there's rumours of a Code Veronica remake still in some kind of stage of development. But just what did Resident Evil do beyond its own walls? Well, as previously mentioned, Resident Evil is responsible for thrusting a genre of games into the spotlight. A genre of games it defined and even gave it a name, survival horror. Alone in the Dark may have started the genre, but it was Resident Evil which truly defined it, gave it a name, and it put it on the map. And what did it do to the gaming industry? Well, how influential was it to other games we played in that era? How many games would we have not had if it wasn't for Resident Evil? Without Resident Evil, there wouldn't be a Silent Hill, Forbidden Siren, Dino Crisis, Evil Within, Dead Space, Alan Wake. Some of those may not necessarily be truly categorized as survival horror in some people's minds, but there is an abundance of other inspired games and clones from the indie circuit which wouldn't be around if it wasn't for Resident Evil. You know, they are, certainly the indie ones, they are passion projects designed to emulate those games, you know, those Resident Evil games, with static cameras, pre-rendered backgrounds. There's a plethora of games out there, and there's still more being made with this formula, still looking to capture that feeling, that horror that Resident Evil was able to bring with its narrow and winding corridors, dark corners, atmospheric music, and creatures straight out of a nightmare. Games like I've played on my YouTube channel, such as the demo of Phase Zero, a game which looks straight out of the Resident Evil paint-by-numbers set, even down to the title being called out in a deep gravelly voice just as the game begins, just like Resident Evil does. Even Tormented Souls, which proved popular enough that a sequel will be released later this year on all major formats. They all follow the Resident Evil playbook and continue to take the pieces that worked so well, along with other bits that Capcom themselves added, or others that have added to their own projects, all to make us remember what Resident Evil did to us. It made us laugh, it made us scared, it made us angry, but most importantly, it made us want more. And although there are many awards this game managed to achieve, it is not in accolades how important this game is measured. It is measured in the games which came after, not just in its own franchise, but in an entire genre filled with developers desperate to make people feel just like they did when they played Resident Evil for the first time, one more time. And that concludes our episode covering Resident Evil 1996.
Well deserving for its own full episode.
Absolutely.
It's just so amazing, and it's still my go-to franchise whenever I get time to pick up a PS5 controller.
Yeah.
It's always my go-to.
It's easy, isn't it? It's easy to play, it's fun to play. You know, even though they are horror, you sort of think to yourself, well, horror shouldn't be relaxing, but they're fun. They are fun, and they're challenging. And, yeah, I mean, they're just amazing games. I mean, yeah, I think I will quickly wrap up with pointing out some of our references, because I don't want to sort of seem as if we're not going to reference those people who also did a lot of work to get this stuff together. So it was an exceptionally difficult topic to cover, because there's so many official sources for the information, but there's also a lot of unofficial ones which I've had to like back up with official ones to ensure that what I'm getting is right and it's true. And I really have done my best to cross-reference everything I can to know that what I'm reading and what I'm putting out there is true or official, and anything that hasn't been, I've done my best to sort of say, well, this is what I think, and etc, etc. But I'd like to acknowledge the following as obvious sources, though. I would encourage any of you to go and check these out. This isn't all just my own work. You know, this is the work of a lot of other people that are dedicated to Resident Evil just as much as I am, if not more so. But all of this stuff is interesting and entertaining to go and read and watch, so go check it out. But I would like to reference Where's Barry and Residents of Evil YouTube channels. They are some really good places that have talked about like the voice actors, the Easter eggs within the game, some of the fan projects as well. The Resident Evil wiki pages are also really, really good places, but you've got to be careful with those, because sometimes people do just put in their opinions. You just make sure you go through all the sources and the citations to read it, to cross-reference it. But again, really, really fantastic place for information on the development especially, and anything else after that has really just been info we've cobbled together through our own knowledge, just what we know of the games as being fans, and just clarifying here and there with a Google search. But we've tried our best to put it all together the best we can. So if there's any other sources out there that I haven't mentioned, then I'd sincerely apologise, but as I said, it's been really, really difficult to sort of keep track of it all, and I haven't sort of not referenced or acknowledged those references purposefully. I do apologise if I haven't. So I think actually there's maybe one I haven't mentioned. I think it's Avalanche Reviews. That was a really good place for some of the fan games that I've read about. That was a really good place for compilations of Resident Evil sort of fan projects and stuff. So, but that is it. And next it's Resident Evil 2.
Yes, my favourite. Well, yeah, between that and Resident Evil 4 for me.
Well, Resident Evil 4 you hammer, don't you?
I love it.
You play that on the reg.
Yeah, I do. But yeah, I love Resident Evil 2 for me. I love the RPD setting.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to...
there is something really cool about the PlayStation, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, yeah. Especially in the remake. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that episode. Hearing your facts that you've found.
I've already found some really good stuff. Honestly, like I've really have found some interesting. There's one in particular. You're just gonna laugh your ass off at it, and I'm desperate to tell you. I really am.
Save it.
I am saving it, because your reaction is going to be absolutely awesome. I can't wait. So yeah, this is it. That's Resident Evil 1996 done. And sorry for the wait. Sorry for the quality of the audio. Hopefully it's better in this version. We are a bit amateur with our setup, and we do try and test it as best we can, but I don't really know what happened, as I said. I don't really know what happened there, but apologies for that. And next we'll be covering Resident Evil 2. Hopefully that will be dropping in the next few weeks. I am on with the research for that one, and I'm trying to get it done as quickly as I can, but I need it to be fully in depth, so you'll just have to bear with me. As I said, we do have our own lives, and we are family people, and we've got very important jobs Claire is a air hostess, and I'm a nationwide builder and gardener.
I was a car dealer last time, so I've gone to the skies now.
Yeah.
Changed my type of conveyance.
Well, I realised I slipped up when I said I was a secret agent because it's not want a secret anymore, so I've just retired and I'm now a builder and gardener. So
yeah, taking it easy.
Nationwide, though.
Yeah. Oh, right, okay.
It's not just here. I do it all over the country. I'm a busy man. It takes me all over the place. I see so many things. So, so just bear with us. We'll get there. So, as always, just hanging tight and we'll get it to you as soon as we can. Check out my YouTube channel, which is Minigrims with a Z. You can check that out, and I'm playing through the Resident Evil games at the moment. Go see me ugly mug. Put a face to an annoying voice, and see me stumble my way through playing Resident Evil, hoarding herbs and ammunition, never using guns that I should be using.
Making my eye twitch.
It is an annoying way to play, though, because I miss out too. I have Magnum rounds and I use 3 rounds and it's game over. I could have had the pleasure of using that popping heads for ages and I don't. So I feel bad about it too. Just bully me about it. So that's it. Go check that out. Go check out our Instagram page as well. We'll back up some of the facts that we've talked about on there. Go and take a look. And until then, be kind to yourselves and each other. And from Claire,
bye everybody.
And I'll say goodbye too. See you later, everybody. Thanks. Bye.